You know the look. You assign some reading material, a textbook, research paper, or historical document, and you watch so many eyes glaze over. Let's be honest, in many ways we are teaching the TLDR generation. Students today are used to short-form content, so when you drop a 10-page packet on their desk full of academic jargon or archaic language, they don't see a learning opportunity, they see a roadblock.
If you would just get up and teach them instead of handing them a freaking packet, yo.
And the tragedy is some of the most engaging stories, essential ideas, and critical debates are hidden inside those boring-looking documents. You want your students to engage, you want them to ask questions, you want them to be curious and critically analyze these primary sources. And while some students do, many others disengage. Maybe they get stuck decoding complex vocabulary, or long-form reading just doesn't align with their learning style. Whatever the reason, they end up on the sidelines missing out on the learning opportunity. So how do we reach those students? How do we bring them in and make the material more accessible? Well, today we stop asking students to just read, and instead we start asking them to investigate. I'm going to show you Google's NotebookLM. It goes beyond standard AI by helping students break through that wall to actually interrogate the source material. And you can rest assured that the information they're getting only comes from the source materials that you provide. I'll take you through all the standard features of the tool to demonstrate how well you can bring your primary sources to life for your students, and then we'll talk about how we as teachers can really turn the tables on AI so that students are leveraging it to enhance rather than replace their thinking. The example that I'll use to demonstrate this tool is a stack of dry World War II documents. We're going to turn them into a multimodal lesson that really maximizes engagement for every single student in your classroom. It makes our lesson planning fast and easy, and the result is a highly engaging, highly differentiated, accessible learning opportunity for everybody. Sounds good, right? Let's dive in.
Town Square.
So imagine you're a history teacher covering a unit on World War II, and today's lesson will focus on the relationship between the US and the UK, specifically the diplomacy that overcame the tension between US neutrality and the UK's need for help. So I'll start by creating a new notebook, and then it's going to ask me to upload my primary sources. And notice how many options you have here. You can directly upload almost any type of file that you already have, connect files and folders on Google Drive, paste website links or YouTube links, or even just copy and paste text. You can also use the AI search feature to discover even more high quality primary sources. And you can upload up to 50 sources total in a single notebook. In this case, I have 3 files that I'll drag and drop. The 1939 Neutrality Act, full of dense legal jargon, top secret letters between Churchill and FDR, and Churchill's famous Fight on the Beaches speech. And while the AI imports my material, I'll go ahead and give this notebook a name, World War II Diplomacy. And to give you a quick tour of NotebookLM, this panel on the left is going to be all of the primary sources that you upload. So you can see them here, and then you can also click on them to see the sources themselves. In the center here is our chat window, which we'll explore in a minute. And then on the right-hand side over here, we have our studio panel, which we will also explore. And then once the source materials are finished importing, the chat window will give us a brief overview of each source. And what just happened here is a key element of NotebookLM, really crucial. When we uploaded our primary sources, it grounded the AI in that primary source material. This is a major distinction between NotebookLM and something like ChatGPT. ChatGPT uses the entire internet for its sources, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, everything. NotebookLM only uses the sources that you upload, giving you a lot more control over the AI and how it interacts with your students. It's locked to your curriculum, so it only pulls information from your source materials. And it proves that by using citations for all of its text output. But more on that later. For now, let's go ahead and customize our chatbot a little bit by adjusting the settings in the upper right-hand corner here. I want this to be a learning guide, so I'll select that. And I like the way that the default length chunks information, so I'll leave it like that. But you can go with shorter or longer answers to suit your students' needs. Now here in the chat window, this is where students can really start to engage with the text. They can ask for a general overview of the source materials in plain language that's easy to understand, or they can ask specific questions to really interrogate the source material. For example, maybe a student wants to know why Roosevelt was so hesitant to lend aid to Great Britain. So they might type, if the US and the UK were allies, why didn't FDR want to help? And it gives me an answer that's pretty easy to understand. While Roosevelt was personally supportive, he was restricted by legal, political, and strategic barriers, legal constraints, congressional authority, public opinion, national defense, and so on. But here's the best part. Rather than just trusting the AI, students can verify every claim it makes by using the citations it provides using these little gray numbers. When they click on one, boom, it jumps directly to the specific passage in the primary source that the AI used to generate that claim. Digital literacy is built right into the tool for students to experience. So we aren't replacing reading, we're making the reading more accessible. Students can get all of their immediate questions answered without the friction of reading through a bunch of text that isn't relevant to that question, so there's less fatigue and greater interest. But it doesn't stop there. NotebookLM has more tools to make the source material even more accessible. Check it out. Let's take those same primary sources and create more modalities for students to interact with and access. So let's think about the students who want to engage with the text but just don't know where to start or which questions to ask. Or maybe they're just better auditory learners overall. So for them, we'll create an audio overview. It uses the format of a podcast to create a general overview of the source material. So it takes that dry reading and turns it into a dynamic and engaging conversation. Under the Studio tab, we'll navigate to Audio Overview, and we'll go ahead and customize it by clicking on the pencil icon. It gives us a few formats to choose from, and while each one has its strengths, I usually find Deep Dive to be the most useful for really unpacking and understanding the source material. Below that, I can choose the language and length of the podcast. And then down here, I can give some specific instructions to steer it toward my lesson objectives. So for today, I might say, focus on the secrecy and tension between US law and the British need for help. I'll also tell it that this is intended for an audience of high school students, so it can craft its language accordingly. It takes a little while to generate, so we'll fast forward a bit, and then...
So I want you to imagine it's the spring of 1940. It's a terrifying moment. The German war machine is just rolling across Europe. And Great Britain is standing there, right on the edge of the cliff. It's a genuine life or death crisis. They need a lifeline, and they need it from the United States.
But there was this huge obstacle in the way. It wasn't about willpower. It was about American law.
And that's the core of our deep dive today.
Pretty cool, right? But let's level up. Notice this little waving hand icon. It's an opportunity for students to interact with the podcast and ask questions as it moves along. And I recommend students actually start here because when you click the hand, it starts the podcast over again, which can be a little annoying if you're already several minutes in. So we'll start the podcast.
So I want you to imagine it's the spring of 19...
And students can jump into the conversation at any point and ask their question by clicking this button.
Unstoppable, it seems.
Oh, hey, our listener wants to join in. What's up?
What does cash and carry refer to?
That is a fantastic question.
Absolutely. We were just about to dive into it.
Okay, let's unpack this right now because cash and carry is the central financial challenge facing Britain.
When we talk about the Neutrality Act, which was designed to keep the U.S. out of the war...
And the best part is the AI always frames its answers to be positive and constructive, no matter how wild the question.
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
I'm just curious, what was George Washington doing during all of this?
That is a wonderful, unexpected question.
A fantastic pivot. And a really important one for context.
Well, during the specific events we are discussing, the spring of 1940, George Washington had been gone for almost 150 years.
Right. But we know exactly why you ask. You're getting at the fundamental spirit of American neutrality.
Absolutely. The Neutrality Act we're talking about, the one trapping MAR, is a direct legacy of Washington.
Washington's farewell address set the long-term precedent for American foreign policy.
Not bad, right? Its answer is framed so constructively that it feels like there really are no dumb questions. So for students, it helps bring down the anxiety barrier while building up confidence so students can ask any question without fear of judgment. So that's our audio overview. Now let's switch gears and try the video overview. We'll go back to the Studio tab, navigate to Video Overview, and click the pencil icon to customize it. And it gives us more options for customization. And then again, down here at the bottom, we can give some custom instructions to steer it toward our learning objective. So I'll say, focus specifically on the emotional tone of Churchill's letters. Contrast his desperation in the letters with the bravado of his public speeches. And then we'll give it some time to generate. And now let's see what it created.
So you think you know Winston Churchill, right? The bulldog, defiant, never giving an inch. But in secret, another Churchill was writing letters. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's early June 1940. The evacuation from Dunkirk, it's just finished. France is about to fall, and Britain? Well, Britain is now completely on its own against the entire Nazi war machine. So you gotta ask, right? If Britain is ready to fight to the bitter end, what's the actual problem? You see, the biggest threat to Britain's survival at that moment wasn't just German bombers. It was a bunch of laws. Laws passed 3,000 miles away in Washington, D.C., a legal fortress that Churchill had to figure out how to get through, and fast.
So because of our instructions, it's not just listing dates or providing general overview, it's explaining the human stakes, and it's providing a multi-sensory input, which we know is much more effective for our audio-visual learners than trying to sift through all the endless paragraphs of text. So creating these different types of access points to the primary sources enables us to appeal to more learners and empower all of our learners with more comprehensive and connected understanding. And look at the types of resources you can easily create for your students under the Studio tab here. You can also create a mind map or different kinds of reports like a briefing doc, study guide, historical analysis, all kinds of other things. Flashcards, you can create quizzes, infographics, and slide decks. And the way this works is anything you create here in the Studio tab will show up for students to use when they access the notebook from their student view. I'll show you what that looks like a little later. In general, I would suggest creating one notebook for each unit you cover, so all of your relevant material for that unit is contained in one place. And then you can use the Studio tab to create more specific resources that speak to individual lessons or learning objectives within that unit. But play around with it to find what works best for you and your students. Now that we've explored the tool, let's get creative. But before we do, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a like and subscribe. It really goes a long way in supporting the channel and encourages me to make more content like this. Now for the fun part. Let's turn the tables on AI and provide an opportunity for our students to leverage it to enhance rather than replace their thinking. The assignment we'll give is called the diplomatic mixer. So let's say that this Churchill FDR lesson is just one part of a larger unit on World War II diplomacy. So we've also studied other countries and their diplomatic interests. For this assignment, each student is given a role as a diplomat from one of the countries we've studied. They're also given a secret mission to accomplish at the diplomatic mixer, a social engagement between all of the diplomats from around the world, kind of like a murder mystery party. In order to be successful, each diplomat needs to be well-versed in their own interests as well as their counterparts. So now they can use NotebookLM to prepare for that mixer. Maybe they go back to the interactive podcasts and ask questions specific to their own role, a counterpart, or the secret mission they've been assigned. Or maybe they use the chat feature as a sparring partner to sharpen their skills and knowledge, like this. Let's say a student is assigned to play Winston Churchill and they've been tasked with securing 50 destroyers from the US. They can ask the AI to act as a skeptical US senator in 1940. I am Winston Churchill. I will attempt to convince you to give me 50 destroyers. Use the 1939 Neutrality Act to find legal reasons to deny my request. Do not let me win easily. And it says, Mr. Prime Minister, I have heard your pleas, but the law is the law. The Neutrality Act of 1939 was specifically passed to preserve the peace of the United States and avoid involvement in foreign conflicts, with its citation. As a senator, I must point out several hurdles. And then it goes on to point out several reasons with citations that Winston Churchill might be denied. Now, as the student, I have to really engage with the primary sources to find a counter argument, because if I don't understand the history, I lose the debate. And if we zoom out and think about this in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, a standard reading packet usually keeps students stuck at the remembering and understanding levels, but the simulation forces them to level up. To accomplish their secret missions, they have to analyze the text to find loopholes, evaluate the senator's argument, and create a new rhetorical strategy. And there's intrinsic motivation because the assignment appeals to their natural desire to socialize. It really turns a boring reading packet into a strategy game where the only cheat code is actually learning the material. And that's what's great about NotebookLM. It's grounded in your sources, verified through citations. It allows students to actively engage the text. It's multimodal and differentiable for diverse learning needs, and we can use it in creative ways to enhance rather than replace student learning engagement. So now, rather than primary sources being an intimidating wall of text, you can give your students the tools to climb over it and access enduring understanding. Speaking of which, this notebook is ready to go, so let's deliver it to students. We'll go right up here to share, and then we can either share it with specific people or copy the link and paste it somewhere that your students can access it. Keep in mind that if you're trying to share your notebook with somebody outside of your school or organization, it's probably not going to work, not unless the setting has been enabled by your admin. In most cases, it's not. But as long as you're sharing it within your school or organization, it should be fine. And now for the student view. The notebook will look something like this when they pull it up. They'll see the primary sources, the chat window, and the studio resources you've created for them, and they can interact with them in all the ways we've seen in this demo. That's it for me for now, but I'm interested in your thoughts. What kind of ways do you want to use NotebookLM in your classroom? Drop a comment below. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to see more AI for Teachers content, check out our website, The Town Square, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Town Square.